What drives a nation to try and control the world? Is it about power, fear, pride, or something deeper, something built into the way a nation sees itself? For over 100 years, the United States has held influence almost everywhere. It has shaped governments, led wars, built alliances, and taken down enemies. But this isn't just a story of tanks, missiles, or presidents. It's a story of how a country thinks, how it feels, how it sees itself and the rest of the world. This video isn't just about what America does. It's about why it does it. Because when we talk about empires, we often think of history, ancient Rome, colonial Britain, old world conquests. But the American empire is different. It was built not just on land or armies, but on a powerful idea. The idea that America is not just a country. It is a mission to lead, a mission to fix, a mission to protect, even when no one asks for protection. Why? Because from the very beginning, America has believed it was different, special, chosen, built on freedom, but also driven by fear. The fear of falling, the fear of losing, the fear of being weak in a world that only respects strength. And that fear shaped a mindset that says, if we don't dominate, we'll be dominated. A mindset that justifies war in the name of peace, that sends troops to protect freedom, even if no one nearby feels free. A mindset that builds weapons not just to fight enemies, but to remind the world who's in charge. But it doesn't stop there. This empire doesn't just want to win. It wants to be loved. It wants to be admired. It wants to be seen as a force for good, even when its actions tell a different story. And that's the real twist. Because what happens when a nation needs to be both feared and admired? What happens when the same country that drops bombs also sends aid? What happens when it claims to spread democracy, but supports dictators? That confusion, that contradiction, is not an accident. It's part of the psychology of a country that sees itself as the center of the world, and fears what happens if it ever steps aside. So in this video, we're going deep. We'll explore the stories America tells itself. We'll look at how fear, pride, and identity shape global decisions. We'll ask the hard questions, not just about politics, but about the mind behind the power. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand something most people never think about. The world's strongest empire isn't just built on weapons or money. It's built on belief. A belief that it must lead or it will disappear. To understand the American empire, we have to go back to the beginning. Long before the military bases, long before the superpower status, there was just a group of colonies fighting for freedom, hoping to survive. From the start, America was built on two powerful ideas: freedom and destiny. Freedom meant breaking away from control. It meant no king, no empire, no master. It meant building something new, something better, a land of opportunity. But destiny? That's where things take a turn. You see, many early Americans believed they were chosen by God to build a nation that would lead the world. They called it manifest destiny. It wasn't just about owning land. It was about claiming a moral right to expand, to spread their system, their values, their way of life. That belief that America had a special mission became the foundation of its identity. And over time, it turned into something even stronger: exceptionalism. Exceptionalism is the idea that America is not like other countries, that it is better, more moral, more important. This belief shaped how Americans saw the rest of the world, not as equals, but as people who needed to be guided or saved. That's how the empire mindset began. It didn't start with force. It started with faith in a story where America was the hero, the land of hope, the light in the darkness. But stories can be dangerous when you believe them too deeply. Because once you think you're the hero, you stop questioning your actions. You justify them. You say, we had to do it. We're making things better. We're the good guys. So when America expanded west and pushed native people off their land, it told itself it was building freedom. When it invaded countries in the name of democracy, it believed it was fulfilling destiny. And when it created a global military machine, it said it was for peace. But beneath those stories was something else. Control, the need to shape the world, the fear of being vulnerable, the belief that chaos would rise if America stepped back. That's how a young nation with big dreams became an empire with global reach, not just through power, but through psychology, through the belief that its mission was too important to fail and too sacred to question. That belief still drives decisions today. And in the next section, we'll look at how fear and control became key tools of empire thinking and why the U.S. always seems to need an enemy. Empires don't run on power alone. They run on fear, the fear of losing what they built. And for America, that fear runs deep. Even from the early days, the country felt surrounded. Enemies outside, traitors inside, foreign powers, radical ideas, rebellion, collapse. It wasn't just fear of war. It was fear of chaos, fear of losing control. That fear shaped the way America sees the world, not as a place of equals, but as a battlefield where you either lead or be led. So what does a country do when it fears the world turning against it? It creates control. It builds alliances, but only when it can lead them. It offers aid, but often expects loyalty in return. It spreads democracy, but backs dictators when it suits its goals. And most of all, it searches for an enemy. Because fear needs a face. During the Cold War, that face was the Soviet Union. Communism became the monster. A threat so big, so dangerous, it justified anything: wars, coups, spying, lies. After that came terrorism. After that, China. Tomorrow, maybe something else. But the pattern stays the same. If America isn't fighting someone, it doesn't feel safe. If there's no enemy, it invents one. Why? Because fear unites. Fear justifies spending. Fear makes the public accept things they normally wouldn't: surveillance, war, loss of rights. And most importantly, fear keeps the empire mindset alive. It says, we can't stop. If we stop, they win, even if no one really knows who they are anymore. But this constant fear has a cost. It builds a nation that's always on edge, always preparing for war, always expecting betrayal. It turns the world into a threat map. It teaches people to trust power, not peace. And it makes it nearly impossible to walk away from conflict, because fear says you'll be attacked the moment you show weakness. This is more than politics. It's a deep psychological cycle. Step 1. Believe the world is dangerous. Step 2. Act to control it. Step 3. Face resistance. Step 4. Take that resistance as proof the world is dangerous. Then the cycle starts again. America isn't the first empire to live in fear, but it may be the first to fear the loss of something more than land, the loss of its identity. Because without an enemy, without control, without being the leader, who is America? That's the question no one in power wants to ask. But it's the one we have to ask, because in the next section, we'll explore how this fear shapes not just governments, but the American people themselves, through media, ego, and identity. If you want to understand how an empire thinks, don't just look at its leaders. Look at its stories. In America, those stories are everywhere. In movies, news, schools, even commercials. They tell one message over and over: we're the good guys. It starts early. Children grow up learning about heroes who won wars, built freedom, and saved others. The villains are always someone else. The story never questions if the hero made mistakes. This constant storytelling builds something deep, something emotional: ego. Not ego as an arrogance, but ego as an identity. A deep belief that we are the center of what's right. So when the U.S. sends troops into another country, many people don't see it as invasion. They see it as rescue. When sanctions hurt innocent people, it's called tough justice. When drones strike a village, it's targeted defense. Because the story says, we don't do bad things. We do necessary things. We're not conquerors. We're protectors. We don't start wars. We end them. And when the reality doesn't match the story doesn't change, it just adapts. That's where media plays its role. News channels frame wars as conflict between us and evil. Pundits use words like freedom, security, and leadership, but avoid words like occupation, abuse, or profit. Even entertainment joins in. Movies show soldiers as noble, CIA agents as clever, presidents as brave. The empire becomes a brand, one that sells pride, safety, and strength. But what happens when that brand is questioned? What happens when other countries push back? When allies criticize? When citizens protest? Then the ego gets fragile. Then the reaction is anger, confusion, or denial. Because the psychology of the empire depends on one key thing: always being the hero. And when reality breaks that illusion, something dangerous happens. People stop listening. They stop trusting. Or worse, they double down on the myth. This is why truth feels like a threat. Why critics are labeled unpatriotic. Why dissent is treated as disloyalty. Because it's not just about policy. It's about identity. And when a whole nation wraps its ego around the idea of being right, then being wrong feels like collapse. That's the power of narrative. It doesn't just shape what a country does. It shapes how it feels about itself. And if the story is always we're the saviors, then every mistake must be someone else's fault. Every conflict must be justified. Every war must be won, even if no one knows what winning means anymore. In the next section, we'll go even deeper into the heart of this identity. Why the military has become more than defense. Why it's a symbol of pride. And why some Americans believe that without strength, they are nothing at all. For most countries, the military is just a tool, a way to protect borders, respond to threats, or support allies. But in America, it's something more. It's not just defense. It's identity. From a young age, Americans are surrounded by symbols of military pride. Parades on national holidays, flags at sporting events, veterans honored in schools, airports, and stadiums. The message is clear: to serve is sacred. To fight is noble. To protect is American. And at the center of this message is power. The belief that strength keeps peace. That if America is the strongest, then the world is safe. That weakness invites chaos. This mindset didn't happen overnight. It grew out of history: world wars, the Cold War, 9/11. Moments where the military was seen as a savior. Moments where people believed violence brought peace. And that belief stuck. Today, the U.S. spends more on its military than the next 10 countries combined. It has over 750 military bases around the world. Its weapons are more advanced, more expensive, more destructive than ever before. But no one asks, why do we need all this? What are we preparing for? Because the spending isn't just about threats. It's about comfort. The military gives people a sense of security. It makes them feel proud. It reminds them that no matter what, their country is strong. And in a world full of fear and change, that feeling matters. So questioning the military isn't just unpopular. It feels like betrayal. If you ask, why are we in so many wars, or shouldn't we spend more on schools or healthcare, you might be called ungrateful, or even un-American. That's how deep the military runs in American identity. It's not just uniforms and medals. It's emotional. It says, we're protectors. We're peacekeepers. We fight so others don't have to. But here's the problem. When strength becomes identity, peace becomes weakness. When defense becomes pride, war becomes easy. When soldiers become symbols, questions become insults. And the deeper the nation ties its worth to weapons, the harder it becomes to imagine a future without them. Because without a strong military, who are we? That's the quiet question beneath the surface. And most people never say it out loud. But it matters because it explains why wars drag on, why budgets rise without limit, and why even in peacetime, the empire always feels at war. In the next section, we'll explore something even more revealing. Why the American empire doesn't just want to be feared, it wants to be loved. And why that desire creates a strange, painful contradiction at the heart of global power. Most empires in history didn't care what the world thought of them. They want to control. They want to land. They want a tribute. But the American empire is different. It doesn't just want to be feared. It wants to be loved. It wants other countries to admire its system, to copy its culture, to thank it for its help, to look up and say, "We want to be like you." That's the emotional contradiction at the center of the American mindset. On one side, military power, sanctions, drone strikes, surveillance. On the other, aid packages, Hollywood movies, fast food, technology, slogans like freedom and democracy. It's like a superpower with a split personality, the warrior and the best friend, the father and the savior. It wants to lead the world, but also be liked by it. And when that love doesn't come, when other nations criticize, protest, or reject American values, it feels personal. Suddenly, allies become ungrateful. Critics become anti-American. Neutral countries become suspicious. Because if you believe you're the good guy, and someone says you're not, you don't just feel challenged, you feel betrayed. This is why American foreign policy often swings between extremes. At times, it offers support, builds schools, sends money, opens trade. At other times, it bombs, invades, overthrows, isolates. It's not just strategy. It's emotion. We helped you, and now you turn on us? We saved you. Why don't you respect us? This isn't how a cold empire behaves. It's how a human behaves, one that craves approval. Because deep down, the empire doesn't just want to rule. It wants to be admired for ruling. It wants to be the hero of its own story, and everyone else's too. But here's the problem. You can't control the world and expect it to love you back. You can't drop bombs and ask for hugs. You can't force your way into another country's decisions, then act shocked when they resist. That's the trap of the American psyche. It wants the rewards of power, without the guilt of empire. So it tells itself stories. We're helping. They need us. They'll thank us later. And maybe, sometimes that's true, but often it's not. And as the years go on, as more nations push back, as global power shifts, as the image of America starts to crack, that desire for love turns into something darker. Frustration, paranoia, anger. And the empire asks itself, why doesn't the world understand us anymore? But maybe the real question is, does the world see us more clearly than we see ourselves? In the next section, we'll face the consequences, not just for the world, but inside America itself. What does this endless pursuit of power and love cost? And is the empire already starting to turn on itself? Every empire leaves a mark on the world. Some build, some destroy. Most do both. But what makes the American empire unique is that its greatest cost may not be what it does to others, but what it does to itself. Let's start globally. Decades of military intervention have left behind broken nations. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya. Countries destabilized, economies shattered, people displaced. And yet, the U.S. still says it went there to help. But the people living through war don't always agree. They see the bombed hospitals, the drone strikes that missed, the promises of democracy that never arrived. And over time, more and more of the world has begun to question the story. The idea that America is always right, that it's always the hero, that its actions are always justified. That myth is cracking. But while the damage abroad is visible, the damage at home is quieter and just as deep. Because an empire that's always at war, even in the name of peace, begins to turn its mindset inward. Fear spreads. Mistrust grows. Violence becomes normal. Police departments get military gear. Surveillance becomes part of daily life. Budget after budget goes to defense. While schools crumble, healthcare costs explode. People live paycheck to paycheck. And the public starts asking, why is there always money for war, but never for us? The answer, they're told, is security. We have to be strong. We have to stay on top. We can't afford to fall behind. But behind that message is another one. You don't matter as much as the mission. That mission, to dominate, to lead, to stay number one, costs trillions. But also costs trust. Trust in government. Trust in truth. Trust in each other. Because when your country is always focused on the enemy out there, it starts to treat its own people like threats too. Protests are seen as danger. Dissent is called disloyalty. Questions are painted as weakness. And slowly, the empire becomes hollow. Powerful on the outside, shaky on the inside. It doesn't fall by invasion. It erodes from within. That's the real cost. Not just broken cities overseas, but broken spirit at home. A country where citizens feel unheard, where fear replaces hope, where might replaces meaning. And all of it in the name of being the greatest power on earth. So now the question isn't just what America does to others. The real question is, what has the empire mindset done to America itself? In the final section, we'll ask what comes next. Can this empire mindset be changed? Can a nation addicted to dominance find a new story? Or is the American empire destined to fall, not from outside attack, but from the weight of its own beliefs? Every empire has a breaking point, a moment where something shifts, not in the battlefield, but in the mind. The American empire may not be collapsing, not yet, but something is changing. For the first time in generations, more Americans are asking hard questions. Why do we spend so much on war? Why are we always afraid? Why do we need to lead everything, everywhere, all the time? And maybe they're starting to realize that the enemy isn't always out there. Sometimes it's the story we've told ourselves for too long. Because the psychology of empire isn't just about control. It's about belief. The belief that power keeps us safe. That strength equals value. That dominance is destiny. But what if that belief is wrong? What if real strength means knowing when to step back? What if leadership isn't about force, but listening? What if the future of America doesn't have to look like the past? That kind of change isn't easy. It requires more than policy. It requires a new mindset, a mindset that accepts limits, that respects other cultures without trying to shape them, that understands you can be proud of your country without pretending it's perfect. And here's the hardest part. It means letting go of fear. Letting go of the fear that if we're not in control, we'll be in danger. Letting go of the fear that we must always have an enemy. Letting go of the fear that being ordinary means being weak. Because maybe the real power isn't in dominance. Maybe it's in humility. Maybe the future of America lies not in empire, but in empathy. Not in endless wars, but in rebuilding trust. At home, abroad, and within. That shift won't come from the top. It won't come from generals or presidents. It will come from ordinary people asking better questions, telling new stories, and refusing to accept fear as the price of greatness. Because the truth is simple. Empires fall, but people endure. And if the empire mind is finally starting to crack, then maybe, just maybe, something better can grow in its place. If this video made you think, if it helped you see things differently, then share it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more content that digs deeper. Because history shows us what happened, but psychology reveals why. And in a world shaped by power, understanding the mind behind the empire might be the first step toward changing everything.